So, good morning, welcome to our session Teaching Methodologies. Our third speaker is Peter Westbrook. I would like to introduce him. He's going to speak about English for university admin staff. And Peter is an academic language consultant. He works in Copenhagen and other universities in Denmark. Over to you.
Thank you very much indeed, Monica. Welcome. It's I've called this, as you can see, English for University Admin Staff. It's all in the mix, and I'm a bit of an amateur musician, so I've got a recording studio desk there that appealed to me to symbolise that. As Monica said, I work as an academic language consultant and at the University of Copenhagen, and it means in that job I teach staff. I have to underline, I don't teach students. I've got a fantastic job. I teach at a university and don't have to teach students. So I teach staff, both academic staff and obviously administrative staff as well. I am originally British, from the southeast of England, but I've lived in Denmark for some 25 years now and worked at the university for 11 of those. So let me just give you a brief outline of what I'm going to talk about. Basically, just a little bit of background, something about the admin staff themselves, their linguistic challenges, how we're meeting those challenges, and then homing in on these particular courses, the course framework and the mix that I'm talking about, and then I'll just round off with that. So to get on with a little bit of background, welcome. See if you can find a seat somewhere or squeeze up next to somebody. This is the university. This is the main building of the University of Copenhagen, and with some 38,000 students, 9,000 staff. It is, and it's got 6 faculties altogether. It's the biggest university in Denmark and one of the biggest in the Nordic region, in fact. And of course, we're all here because of growing internationalisation, which was. I think they hit the nail on the head with the plenary this morning. That's all the very many things that are involved in internationalisation. That's why we're here. But obviously, like a lot of other universities, more and more courses are being taught through the medium of English as one of the consequences. So we're getting a lot of students from abroad. So as an example of that, every single master's level programme taught at the Faculty of Science is taught in English at a university in Denmark, so that gives you an idea of how far that's come in Denmark. So we're getting more and more non-Danish speaking students and staff, so English is being used more and more generally at the university. As a result of this development, the university decided to introduce a policy of so-called parallel language use, which means that English and Danish are in fact parallel languages. They have equal status as teaching language at the university. And in order to meet the challenges that this situation throws up, using 2 languages, they set up the centre I work for, CIP, the Centre for Internationalisation and Parallel Language Use. If I say CIP, it's the centre. If I forget, maybe it's new to you. That's the centre I work for. So we call it, for obvious reasons, the Centre for Internationalisation and Parallel Language Use, which was established in 2008 as a language centre, but we're also a resource and research centre. So obviously, and where I come in is the Language Training and Development Centre as well. So that's a little bit about where I work. So now I just move on to welcome the admin staff. I've noticed that, like a lot of other conferences, when people think about language centres, they're thinking about students, they're thinking about academic staff. Typically, so there's a lot of focus on EMI, there's a lot of focus on EAP. There is no, as far as I can see, no umbrella sort of nice little acronym for English for admin staff at universities. Although we can come up with one if you're into that. I did notice actually, in the plenary this morning, the first mention of the administrative staff by Jocelyn Wyberg, who was one of the presenters this morning. I don't know if nobody would have noticed that amongst all the other bullet points, but she mentioned the administrative staff in one of the bullet points. So there is a little bit of hope there. But typically, the admin staff seem to have been neglected in terms of their language skills. And more, of course, their working environment is using English. So people who are working in Denmark and Copenhagen, they're using English. They're actually practicing parallel languages. They need to use English. And with some 4,000 admin, technical and secretarial staff at the university, they make up, if you remember the staff number at the beginning, almost half of the staff at the university, in fact. So who are they? Who are the admin staff? They are... oh right, I can't do my little. You get it all at once here. I had a nice little one, bringing them all one at a time. But in this mode, which is going to trip me up later on, yeah, you can't do the animation, boom, 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 boom. So there you've got them all. But it's typically people that work in finance, people that work in HR, student counsellors, office trainees. You can read them all there. These are some of the main groups that I've taught and teach at the university. So what kind of things do they have to do in English? Well, for example, HR staff might have to explain to a member of staff who's not from Denmark about the holiday rules. The holiday rules are notoriously complicated in Denmark. It doesn't matter why, but they might have to say, for example, you must take your holiday in the year following the year in which you accrue it. That is after the so-called qualifying year. The so-called holiday year starts on the 1st of May and ends on the 30th of April the following year. You don't need to worry if you haven't got that. That's not the point. The point, and it's changed now anyway. The point is that I've underlined some what you could call technical vocabulary that will make it much easier for an HR member of staff to explain something about holiday rules to somebody in English. Similarly, finance staff might have to explain to a researcher how to get their travel expenses reimbursed. Travel expenses as part of their grant, for example. They've gone out travelling, and there's a big system for how they get the expenses reimbursed. Study administration staff might have to talk to a student about exam rules, and so on. You get the picture, I think, here. But what exactly do they need? What kind of linguistic challenges are they facing? Just to take a little step back, the centre we run an awful lot of different kinds of courses in both English and Danish, in fact. A lot of my colleagues teach Danish to typically academic staff. We run a lot of courses, grammar courses, email writing, one-to-one courses, but common to all the courses are that we send out needs analyses to all the participants, whatever kind of course it is. So I thought I would just give you a few quotes from, and again, you get it all in one lump there, so you have to digest it one at a time. So these are just some of the quotes, or a sort of a summary of some of the quotes. So starting up the top left, I'd like to be more comfortable in English, get some standard email phrases. I want to be more confident when speaking to students and improve my pronunciation. I'd like to improve my grammar, push my English up to a more professional level. A lot of admin staff feel that it impacts on their feeling of being professional in their job, that they have to use a foreign language quite a lot. And then finally, I sometimes lack technical words, and my vocabulary overall could be better. And this is in fact the main challenge is terminology. Terminology. You heard it first here. No, it's this tends to be where they fall down. Some of these technical words that I showed you briefly before, and that's why this presentation is basically focusing on the terminology courses. I'm running lots of other courses, but these are terminology courses which I'm focusing on here. So typically HR people, finance people, and study administration staff who use English, obviously relevant for their job. Good. Then I will be moving on to meeting those challenges. So just it gives you a little bit of an idea of some of the linguistic challenges here. So meeting the challenges, we run these terminology courses. I run these terminology courses, and this is just to give you a little bit of background on the sort of structure of the courses themselves. Typically, they are some 6 to 12 participants. We have a policy of having a maximum of 12 participants in these courses. They are typically B1, B2 level in the CEFRA scale. And then typically a course will be 20 45-minute lessons, which, if you work it out, is the structure normally is once a week for 3 hours over 5 weeks. That's 20 lessons. And they're based on terminology lists. And now, originally, I kicked these courses off some 10 years ago. And originally, I got a list of 500 key terms from our translation centre, who considered these words to be key university administrative terms over a number of different administrative areas. And to start with, I ran just a general course for all the admin staff. Yeah, just what we called I think we called it I can't remember now, but it was a general admin course. But it very, very quickly became obvious that HR people wanted HR vocabulary and weren't that interested in finance vocabulary, and finance people wanted hardcore finance stuff about grants and budgets and weren't that interested in study administration stuff about exams. So I started specialising. So this is English for very, very specific purposes, if you like. And the courses are both, they cover both speaking and writing. It's mainly speaking, but we do writing in terms of email writing. That's because that's what the admin staff will use a lot as well. So just to give you a little bit of, again, another element of the background, this is just the course cycle. And basically, as I mentioned, it's not rocket science, but it's just a basic way of how the courses develop and progress. So as I mentioned, we send out needs analyses to all participants. These needs analyses have helped us put the course together, and then we run the course, and then we also have evaluations, of course, after every course. And then out of all these terminology courses, I'm talking specifically about the terminology courses here in this presentation. Typically, some words will come up that I've not come across before, even after 10 years, that somebody will say, yes, but what about this strange term in Danish? Now I'll have to look that up, I'm not sure what that is. And sometimes that will then get added to the HR list, so I will then update the HR list. We have these HR lists, finance lists, and so on. And that will then perhaps inform the next version of that course later on. So that's basically what that cycle is, and then the cycle starts again. So that's just a little bit of background of the course in general. Now I can get into the sort of crux of the meat of what this is about, or rather the nitty-gritty. So I'm going right down to, this is actually what I do on a course. It's just an example of the sort of things I do. So the course framework and the mix. Now the mix refers actually to the mix of exercises, tasks, role plays, discussions, activities that I put together. And I'll show you how I put these together in a moment. And then the point about this is that for these terminology courses, I very much use a similar framework and similar activities, not exactly the same activities, of course, but similar activities that I can just slot the different kinds of terminology into. And I'm going to give you some examples of some of those activities in a moment. The goal basically is to get some sort of fine balance, as I presume it is for, I don't know what you all do, but teachers, to have some sort of language teachers, to get some sort of balance between input and output from the participants, some sort of interaction, practice, fluency, revision activities, and of course it should also be fun, have some sort of variety and maintain people's interest. They're spending a whole morning a week for 5 weeks, so they need to be 5 minutes. I should be all right with that if I speed up a bit. Yes, good. Okay, this is the course framework. Basically, it's no big surprises there. I told you that the course is basically over 5 weeks. and 3 hours. So I split it into 3 hourly sessions there with a break in between. So they go for an hour and then have a break and so on. So unsurprisingly, I'll start with some sort of icebreaker. This, I've got a note to say, feeds into what Samuel Lagier, if I'm saying it right, he talked about safe space in a classroom. It's very, very important. So I typically would have some sort of activity where they interview each other, something very basic, and then present each other. So it's very, very frightening to present yourself, but it's not anywhere near as frightening to present somebody else, and you've got a pal there to start with. If we were, I'm pointing at you, if we were a pair interviewing each other and then presenting to the class. So that's typically how I would start. Of course, home study, some sort of vocabulary exercise and some sort of email writing. Obviously, that's fairly straightforward. Similarly, at the beginning of each session, I will go through homework and exercises, emails, and have some sort of vocabulary revision exercise. So then, to go into some of the activities, then typically in the second hour of the first lesson, I have some sort of sort the terms task, which will be look like that. So you don't need to read the whole thing. The idea is that there's 24 key terms that they then in pairs would have to sort into those 4 categories. This is just to focus mental energy on these terms. There is a kind of right answer, but that's not the point. The point is that they're thinking about these terms. They've got the opportunity to look them up on we've got a University of Copenhagen dictionary. This one is actually for office trainees because I thought it was easier for you to see the difference. So they actually have to sort them into study administration, finance, human resources. So they would look at accounts. So that would go into which category, for example? Finance. Well done. Yes. Admission requirements, study administration. Yeah, you've done this before. Yeah. So, but the point is, and then we have a discussion about where they go and any discrepancies, anything that people think go into different categories. So that's typically how I would kick off the terminology course. Then I would have in the second lesson, third hour, something more aimed at fluency. And this actually was something that Catherine Walter, and I don't know if you know this, but she mentioned the 4-3-2 in terms of reading. This is Paul Nation's 4-3-2 in terms of presenting. So what it looks like, something like this, that they will, in pairs, they will put a presentation together. But I can send you my slides, by the way, if you're at all interested in the slides. I'm more than happy to send them. But this is, for example, HR, so they would put a little presentation together, and then the class would be split in 2, and one person would stand and give their presentation about, for example, sick leave to a visitor for 4 minutes, and then the visitors move round to the next poster, and then the presenter has 3 minutes to present the same thing, but to a new person. So it's more natural that they have to do it again. They're not just repeating for the sake of repeating. There is a kind of point for them to repeat it. And finally, they do it a third time for 2 minutes. So that's that. Finally, I've picked something called a vocabulary revision puzzle at the end of the last session there, which is, I don't know if you've seen these. These are very common puzzles. Yeah, okay, 2 minutes. That should be all right. Very common puzzles where they get. I do it where you get a set of clues, and you have to find out which 2. In this case, employees are involved in a breach of contract or something, and that will be the last 2 clues to be filled in. But they will get clues, and I give them round the class, and some of the clues you can, because it's got the left-hand office, the middle office, right-hand office, they have to find out these different job title, current task, error, and faculties. They have to fill in those 20 squares there. So, for example, somebody might say, "Oh, I've got the exam secretary has the right-hand office," so you can put the exam secretary in there. Good. And then somebody else it didn't make sense before, but now they say, aha, the programme secretary works in the office immediately between the dean and the exam secretary, so they can put those 2 in, and so on. And then there's another one, then they can fill that, and gradually you fill it in, and you end up with 2 employees at the end, and those are the 2. But I use it as a meeting exercise, so it's both it's both a fluency exercise, but they're also, obviously, I changed the terminology according to whether it's finance, whether it's HR, this is sort of more HR orientated. But that seems to work quite well. If you like puzzles, if you don't like puzzles, I suppose it's not that. No, but it tends to work quite well once they understand what it's about. So that's it. That's basically the sort of framework and just some ideas of the sort of things I do. And the point is that the same activities can be used with different kinds of terminology. So just to round off, as a conclusion, the course framework, which I showed you, and the mix of activities. I haven't shown you the whole mix of activities, but obviously that was just a sort of taster. And obviously this is a simplified form. The activities are mixed up with sort of presentation of vocabulary and discussions and questions and answers, and a little bit of teacher explanation if needed. But it seems to work. From the evaluations, they seem to be successful. This is a few quotes, in fact 5 to be absolutely precise. Testimonials from the evaluations. So somebody said, the material was 100% relevant for us. There was a wide variety of teaching forms. They liked the differentiation in the exercise. They found it both fun and instructive, luckily, and they actually learned something. So that I've cherry-picked a little bit, but they are successful courses. That's the point, which is why I felt justified in presenting them to you today. So that's basically all, but I've got it's just a call to arms. What about the other universities? I assume there's some of you who are interested in this area. So what are your universities doing about the admin staff? And I had that was going to pop up and look really good. What about the admin staff? But anyway, a minor thing there, but that's all I think I've got time for. I'm going to finish there. Yeah? Thank you for your attention and interest. That's all I've got to do.
Thank you very much. So I open the discussion.
Yeah?
Yeah, we have questions in the chat. Okay, we can start
In
with
the
the
chat,
chat.
this was a comment that popped up close to the start, but it says, I would think more ICs support language skills for admin staff. We do in Groningen.
Oh yeah, great. Yeah, I think
From AND.
from
AND.
yeah, yeah, I know Groningen. They do quite a lot of that sort of thing, but I have to remember. I ought to write down Groningen, actually. Yeah, good. Yeah.
Humboldt University Berlin. A couple of years ago, we got funding for the courses. Now the funding is no longer there, so we actually for all departments, for all admin and technical departments that wanted this, and what we did is they went to the language centre because the language centre knew who people could teach the courses, and what we did was we said, okay, let's have people in their subject groups like computer and media centre and human resources and finance department, and we actually went there and said, I mean, the needs analysis in advance when you know what you're looking for. So actually went there and asked them, what do you need? What kind of situations do you get exposed to students or staff or whatever, and you need to communicate with them. So we did it on that basis. So we had funding for 3 semesters, and it worked pretty well. I was asked to do the legal department, but I passed it on to somebody else because I know how demanding the legal department.
Sounds like a wise move.
Finally, I can dig out the details. I'll send you an email. We actually have a network in Germany of language centres that are
You
involved.
mentioned that. I'd be very, very interested to see that. Yeah, because
I'll have to dig it out when I get back to Berlin.
Great. I've got a card. I think. Yeah. Thanks very much.
Great. Chat?
Another couple of comments. Kasia Sobatska says, thank you. Interesting, Matthias Weinheid. Nice that somebody has picked up this thread for the sake of the admin staff who are mostly, as Pete said, neglected. Yeah, he continues, thank you very much for your ideas. Lina Evesti, at the University of Helsinki, the LC organizes but HR finances course for all staff members, but courses are few.
Yeah. Again, it's I can't help noticing it's the Scandinavian countries and Holland whose general level of English is amongst the best, I think. And I wonder why that is. But yeah.
University. So comparing to number of admin staff, so we are very small. So some, I would say, 50 people.
Yeah.
Maybe less a little bit.
Okay.
However, so since the very beginning, the university started working also in the education, higher education area. So we run the courses for administrative staff. So we have small groups and native speakers and lectures based on the level they start, and they are part of a personal development plan of that stuff. So we run also courses for academicians, especially those who are not, let's say, as good as expected in English, but we do that.
Okay. What was your university?
Crossroads University.
In
Czech Republic.
Czech Republic, yeah. I needed a country, so it's the first time I've been in the Czech Republic for 3 days out of my life. And I'm sorry, I'm not more up on where everything is. I know where Prague and Brno are now.
I'm also at Crossroads University, also in the Czech Republic, and we also have, it's part of a, I suppose we're lucky that we have funding for it, that there is a 3-year funding plan, and staff can enroll, and they have to, over 3 years, have 80 hours of personal development lectures, and we also split it into English for academics and English for admin staff. Which I think is fantastic.
Yeah,
I think really cool. Also to help internationalization, because we are not a very international university as Masaryk or Charles University might be. So I think it helps to like the people receiving the international students at the dormitories, for example, you know. So yeah, that's really nice.
Exactly.
I was in this university, and take your point a little bit further. I'm German, and I'm teaching actually the admin staff of the language center German.
Okay.
Because they actually, people who are employed in language centers, also the admin staff, they love languages. So, Libor, great thinker, to ask me to actually teach German, even though that's not what, because they're just interested and that's motivating them. So it's not directly for work, because obviously they would communicate in English or Czech, not in German in this country, but
I think
it's a
that's
slightly different point.
No,
and so I'm not necessarily using terminology. I have a complete mixture of class. There is a finance person, there is an administrator, there's HR, they're completely mixed. So I'm not doing terminology as such. I try to find interesting topics. So
you're doing general German for you're doing general German.
Yes,
admin language, general admin staff.
General German, yes.
Yeah. So it's not aimed at,
because the language center people, they love languages.
Oh, that's really good. Yeah, I mean that would be great if our admin staff also learned what I've talked about, presumably to a third language as well. But that's an idea.
It's what we were discussing in the last session. It doesn't just have to be English, it can also be other. We're talking about training to teach in another language, training to communicate. I mean, it's good if you're a German and you come to Copenhagen and they speak to you in German and not English, that's a bonus. You're even more welcome.
We actually have, I haven't got time to go into detail, but we actually, as the centre, we have projects that have involved other languages, including German, including French, including Arabic, in different contexts as well. So it's mainly Danish and English, but we do have other projects. I like to see it.
Another comment from the chat, from Nina Avesti. Staff can participate in a degree student courses, provided there are open places after student registration in Helsinki.
No, okay. Which, you mean language courses or content courses?
Oh,
for language courses.
Language courses. No, okay, okay. That's an interesting. Except in my mind, they've got quite different needs, because we do teach students. It's just I don't personally teach students. I have my colleagues teach EAP, classic EAP.
Just one comment.
Yeah.
I'd like to thank you for the ideas because we organized 2 semester courses. However, the idea of, let's say, crash course, so let's say from 20 hours in 5 weeks' time, is a great idea for the time where we are not in the semester or there is holiday time, so to provide the staff with some crash course which is not so time consuming and at a time where they are not so busy.
Yeah.
So great idea.
Yeah, I mean, we have, this is a typical model, but I mean, we have other, for example, I don't know, two lessons a week for 10 weeks or different models. That just tends to be there, but I take your point, yeah.
Just not to think about, so 160 lessons per year.
Yeah.
Just 20 kind of refreshment or just aid at some skill or the need they have, that's really.
But that's a lot of time, that's really good, yeah.
Lena from Helsinki, there's a little bit of a delay, so I apologize.
No, that's okay.
She said language and all languages.
Yes, yeah, and I agree. Even though I can really only teach English. I do speak Danish. I'm fluent in Danish, but I wouldn't like to teach it.
So, any other comments or questions? Okay, so thank you again.